Our next session is a panel called Dam for Higher Education. We worked hard to get the cleverest title we could, but what we really did work hard on is to gather together a lot of top talent in the field of DAM and DAM for Education, and I welcome the chance to have you join me in this session. We're going to, the order of business for our session here is we're going to have two fairly quick presentations and then some commentary and questions about those presentations. For those presentations, as for the successive panel conversation, we welcome your questions to come in through the Q&A tab as you've been using here during industry work or here today during DAM for Higher Education. I'm going to give just a brief hello to each person as I introduce them. And so I'll start with our first presentation from John Worley, who's the Senior Product Manager at Western Governors University. And I think out of the various institutions who are presenting today, I think, John, yours is the youngest that's grappled with digital. And you've grappled with digital from the very beginning. So John, welcome. I'm going to be the slide master. And that means there might be a little bit of back and forth while we get these going, but just bear with us. And here we go. John, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Morley. I am a Senior Product Manager over our Digital Asset Management System at Western Governors University. I am based in Salt Lake City, Utah. I've been doing DAM systems for about 5 years now. And before that, I was involved in content management and data warehousing software products. So I got into DAM systems just being at the right place at the right time at the previous company I was in, and they needed someone, and I had the most relevant experience. So today I would like to tell you briefly about our DAM implementation at WGU. And it's a unique use case. What we're doing is quite different than a typical marketing situation. We're using a DAM to create, store, manage, and archive assets that are used in our curriculum, so in our courses. So essentially that is the actual online courses that the student takes. A little bit about WGU. WGU stands for Western Governors University, and we are an all-online university with 4 colleges. We focus on non-traditional students that need flexibility that online learning offers. At WGU, we are accredited in all 50 states. We have approximately 130,000 students, including about 15,000 that are in the military. That's interesting because the military students can attend from anywhere in the world. All of our learning is competency and skill based, and this is a very important aspect of our education as we move forward. Our students pay on a tuition subscription model instead of paying per course, so they can go at the speed that they're comfortable with, and they can complete as many courses as the student is able to in a time period. We do focus on student debt and reducing that. And again, our focus at our university is on giving the students the skills to either upskill or reskill for better jobs. Our initial goals for our DAM system were similar to most of you out there. Typical, CRUD type operations, create, revise, delete, etc. Search, archive, publish capabilities. Since this is our first DAM, we have been going through from an unorganized silo content storage on people's hard drives, and we're now switching over to a single DAM with a lot of governance. So you can imagine there's been a lot of change in process and kind of attitude of how assets are managed. And honestly, as much change as that is, this may end up being the easy part. So I'd like to talk about some of the challenges that we've gone through. First off, the first challenge is content type. So we are dealing with some very unique and challenging content types. We do have the standard, what I call damage types, video, images, audio. Next slide. But I think what makes it challenging for us, we're also going to store some very unusual content types. For example, one type is text blocks. That's not very DAM related, but we're finding that to meet our needs, we're going to store blocks of text in different formats so we can use those in kind of small chunks within our courses. The next is interactive. Interactive could be something like in the education model, we have an asset called GeoGebra. It's just a type of asset that we use an external server for, but we store that as a piece of content within our DAM. So we're looking at various types of interactive content and seeing how those can solve some different problems for us. And the last is something that's very unique, which is third-party content. And with third-party content, we're not storing a binary. We're actually just storing the URL and metadata as a piece of content. And that way we can know where it's at within a course and know a little bit about it, including the intellectual property rights and maybe when it expires and different things. So that's our first challenge. Our second challenge is content curation. We need to tag content appropriately to meet the objectives of the university. So in addition to normal tagging, like most of you would do with things like descriptive tags and IP rights, we're focusing on some different, very unique things, such as courses and programs that the content resides in. Also, we have a heavy focus on skills and competencies. And then we want to take our content heavily tagged so we know where it's at, when it's used, and if appropriate, we'll tag it with content so we can find it for reuse. With content, our course content, we're in the process at WGU of completely rebuilding our student infrastructure. And so the DAMs is a big part of that. Go to the next slide. Thank you. Oops, go back one. My bad. So we have a few things that we're trying to do. Some of the big changes we're accounting for is learning elements. Right now, we can only offer courses. So what the DAM will enable us to do is to have smaller sizes, such as certifications, micro certifications, and we're getting content so we can populate this curriculum a little easier. We're doing skill-based education, so our content is going to reflect that if it's relevant. And then we're also branching out to a lot of different multiple styles, channels, formats to match our student needs. And then the last one is personalized and dynamic content. So that one is really the holy grail that we're reaching towards, how to personalize courses to meet the needs of our students and to make our students have the best outcomes possible. This is our long-term goal, really. Okay, next slide. Go one more. For both internal and external integrations, this is always a challenge with all DAM systems. We are integrating internally with course creation tools, also a skills database. I would like to mention we have an open skills network that WGU has been involved with. And if you Google Open Skills Network, you can find that. It's open to everyone to use. It's something that you may want to consider in the future. Externally, we have course delivery systems, third-party content that we have to integrate with also. Let's skip to the last slide. Long-term vision, please.
Coming up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So long-term, we are looking to govern curriculum content, the quality of it. We want to know where our content is in our courses. Of course, manage IP rights, and then tag our content with things like skills and competencies, which is a heavy focus for us in the future. And then this will allow us to personalize our content in our courses and to reuse it so we get more utilization. Anyways, this is a very unique use case, and we hope you'll enjoy the rest of the presentation.
John, thanks so much. It is a fascinating use case, and someday you and I are going to have an hour and a half together to take questions. So looking forward, very much looking forward to that. So 1 second here. Oops, there we go. All right. So thank you, John. Now, next up, a long colleague of the DAM community who I'm sure got his undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate degrees in digital asset management. Rick O'Quinn joins us from the University of Georgia in Atlanta, where he's the operation manager. And like many of us, a funny thing happened on the way to our careers. It involved digital asset management. Rick, thanks for preparing this presentation, and I'll work with you to go through the slides here.
Okay, you can stay right there. Hey, y'all, I am Rick O'Quinn. I'm the operations manager, and I'm the primary DAM administrator at the University of Georgia Division of Marketing and Communications. Like David said, I didn't aspire to be a DAM manager. I began my career as a photographer, and all the DAM stuff just seemed to kind of happen along the way. Next slide. If you're not familiar with the University of Georgia, my presentation borrows from the highest praise we bestow on our beloved bulldog mascots. He's a damn good dog. Next. Our history dates back to 1785, when UGA became the first state chartered university in the United States. Don't listen to anybody from the University of North Carolina. It is now a comprehensive land and sea grant institution. We have a core mission that reflects in our motto: to teach, to serve, and to inquire into the nature of things. The arch is the iconic symbol of the institution, and you keep that in mind because it plays a unique role a little bit later on in the dam. Our main campus, that's good right there, spans over 750 acres in Athens, Georgia. It's also the home of the best rock bands from the 1980s, including REM and the B-52s. We have 3 satellite campuses, as well as a cooperative extension and research facilities that serve every county in the state. Next. Our 17 schools and colleges serve about 40,000 students, and we have a workforce that ranks in the top 50 in the state of Georgia. Next. When I was asked to share the DAM origin story of UGA, I realized it actually reaches back about 55 years to this simple card catalog filing system that was created by the photographer in our office, which was then known as the Public Information Office. And although the digital part was technically missing, an asset management system was definitely born. Even more surprising, I realized that we had only had 2 primary DAM asset managers over that period of time. And we're still using the same photo file naming structure today that was started back in the 1960s. As the number 2 guy in this system, I inherited it about 31 years ago when I was hired as the new photographer. And you can stay right there. With just a bit of HyperCard experience, I began searching for a computerized solution to replace that card catalog. The next year, using a surplus computer, we launched a flat file database with the basic fields that we are still using today as our metadata. Next. The Kodak Photo CD actually transformed our system into a true, but maybe crude DAM system a few years later, when it put the film to digital imaging possibilities at our fingertips. And then along the way, our team grew. Film scanners and then digital cameras made creating digital assets a lot faster and a lot easier. But for 26 years, that database we adapted with the times and with our unit needs. And my point here isn't simply to share that old guy back in my day story, although I am, and it is. but it's also to serve as a reminder to not get caught up in the latest technology and all those whiz-bang features that everybody tells you about, and forget about the basics, the foundations of building a dam that will determine if the dam you're building today will measure up to the dam you need in the future. Next slide. My moment of truth came in 2015 when a change in leadership ushered in a unit reorganization with a new focus on serving the communications and marketing needs of our institution. Next. A powerful cloud-based dam system was needed with a focus on controlling and delivering the brand assets to our growing community of campus strategic communicators. Our goals for a new dam included maintaining a central archive for all of the unit's image assets, sharing select brand assets with those campus communicators, auditing our existing metadata and taxonomy, and then migrating nearly 1 million assets into the new dam. Breaking down unit silos by providing upload access and asset control, and providing our users access anytime, anywhere, any device. And also to create workflows that would free up our creative team from what they consider the drudgery of metadata and dam duties. And finally, to plan for the addition of future asset types. Next slide. The Digital Arch was launched in 2017 and now hosts over 1.2 million archive and active assets. And there's that arch that I told you about earlier. Sometimes I feel like my greatest challenge and success in the whole process was creating a dam word salad that was able to fit the ARCH acronym. It serves approximately 150 strategic communicators across the institution with permissioned accounts and unit asset storage. And in addition, we have our general campus community, strategic partners, and the public have access to over 4,000 brand assets. Next. Since the initial launch, we've been adding other assets, including video B-roll, institutional logos, graphic files, COVID-19 resources like everyone else, training guides for the dam and other uses, and even putting in our unit software. Today, with the hardest part hopefully behind us, our goals for the future are maybe a little mundane, but then they're still no less important. We plan to update our governance documentation, which was really kind of only half-baked and skimmed over during implementation, and also to audit the metadata and taxonomy to streamline our input. We're also integrating our assets with the institutional brand site, which predates our dam and therefore created duplication of assets between the two systems. And we're also exploring ways to increase those unit asset contributors and get more assets into the dam, which will remove duplication of systems across campus, save money, and remove the roadblocks to effective sharing of assets between the different marketing communications units. Challenge here is how to streamline the unit workflows, since dam is not the primary responsibility for most of the individuals involved in the units. What they have now may not be the best solution, but it's their familiar solution and it works. And then finally, after delaying my retirement for 4 years, I just want to drop that mic and walk out the door with my dam in order. Thank you. Appreciate you listening to me. Go Dogs.
Well, Rick, thanks so much for that. And John, I think the two presentations bookend a lot of what we can see in the potential of dam and what we grapple with in dam. And John, as in John Bateman, you have the privilege in working for one of the vendors that has clients around the world of seeing different use cases like this it's the same root technology from various vendors. What do you see here about governance that's exemplified in the two presentations that you've seen today?
Yeah, I think obviously both stories have similar themes. What we find is there's certainly a theme of transformation of unorganized, sort of siloed content to a single dam with controls, and trying to limit your risks with those controls through centralizing everything and keeping it in a safe, secure place, really. There's a lot of talk always about risk mitigation around governance. And I think, you can see it through planning, and I suppose, it's like the measure twice and cut once kind of proverb. The work that goes into the preparation of the dam always pays off at the end in terms of the governance. So it's understanding the different types of users that you have, the roles that they play within the dam and their interactions with assets. And that's going to really drive the rules and the playground that you build for those users,
One of the things that was interesting for me in hearing about the kind of the journey, Rick, that you exemplify with this, and I'm so appreciative of it, and your openness, the spark of innovation that you've continued to bring. And then John, to undertake such a radical departure of the norm, we'll call them kind of the normed use cases for DAM, but one that just absolutely lights up the horizon in my mind, and as a global kind of DAM advocate and believer. And John Bateman, what's the best advice you would give to John M. and to Rick about how they talk to you, or to their vendors about innovation and about their client needs? How do you like hearing about variety and innovations?
Yeah, I think really what we try to do with our clients is, like, understand where they're coming from, I suppose. So the investment at the start in finding out about use cases and user stories is really what pays off later on. So for the customer side, I think understanding your own needs clearly, talking to all the different stakeholders and users throughout the organization, and being able to clearly explain the needs and workflows, sometimes even having kind of reverse demonstrations of the steps that people go through within the workflows and the asset lifecycle throughout their systems. So really, I think a lot of it is just gathering as much information as you can in a structured way, and being able to clearly explain what the requirements are.
Great, thanks. Lee, I'm so glad you could join us today. Lee is the Digital Assets Manager of the Office of Public Affairs and Communications of Yale University, where we heard our keynote from today. And Lee, you've got a nice audio set up there, so I'm going to ask you to kind of do a little stereo reflection here between the organizational world you work in, which Lewis gave an outstanding recap of this morning in the keynote, and what we heard from Rick, who has seen the evolution of use cases and evolving, unfolding in his responsibilities that have grown so much. What advice would you share after listening to Rick talk about campus-wide thinking? Because you really live that in your role, your senior role at Yale.
Well, yeah, it's one of the core challenges of trying to put any kind of dam together. It's fairly obvious, I think, that the idea of having everything in one place is very seductive, and it's very easy to say, but it's inordinately difficult to actually execute, particularly since everybody who wants to use this so-called one place of truth is going to have incredibly difficult needs or different needs. So I think we're always going to be having lots of different instances of DAM, as we do certainly at Yale. But one of the challenges, I think, is for DAM providers and DAM companies to start to consider interoperability between different systems. How can they talk to each other, even at a rudimentary level, even if it's just for discovery? And I know that, this is a massive topic in libraries, but it's still extremely difficult. I know at Yale there are different dam instances in museums and art galleries. And we share a lot of the same infrastructure and sometimes even the same dam vendors. But getting those to talk to each other, that's a challenge. And, you know, it would be incredible. You know, what I find also kind of interesting is, you know, John was talking about his application of DAM as more or less a content server, which is almost the opposite of what a lot of folk think of it as, which is somewhere you just dump things so you can find them again one day. And I've certainly experienced that entire cycle where I am. We first started with our DAM almost exactly with that use case, bringing material in so it could be distributed to students and classes, you know, putting in sound effect libraries for film students, things like that, people doing film production. And then, you know, that sort of gradually came to me to start working to archive a retired university photographer who had basically the history of Yale on a couple of hard drives, which turned out to be a bit worrying. And then before I knew it, we were doing content, you know, delivery again, as we've sort of morphed into supporting web publications of news bulletins. We're receiving information. Videos are being, you know, delivered to us with photographers delivering things all the time, taking stuff on their phones. And then we're sending that out from the DAM to all kinds of media outlets and people who want to have that. So
Thanks,
the whole thing is cycling all the time.
Thank you, Lee. John, I'm going to look over at where I've got the questions coming in. So excuse me for looking in the other directions for John B, but I want to ask this accurately.
Sure.
You mentioned that WGU DAM stores text blocks. Are these used in the dynamic content you described later in your presentation, or are these retrieved manually by users for their intended use?
We're still developing the functionality, but we're looking to use text blocks as searchable content in the DAM that say an instructional designer could could grab and actually manually place them in a course.
Great, thank you for that. Now, Rick, I'd like to turn all the comments that have come over about UNC and the University of Georgia over to you for a rather lengthy side conversation, but we will attend to that later. But we did have a question come in. You mentioned using some of one of DAM's emergent pieces of functionality was to help with COVID and COVID response, COVID materials. So we had a question come in and said, please address what you had to do to the metadata model and what the governance was on that. Really interesting question.
So it actually, everything was pretty well set, because what we mainly were putting in for our purposes in marketing communications were graphic documents and templates for use in signage, social media, you know, all those uses around campus. Every sign you see up in every door and window that you walk into a building now, they had to come up with a brand and put all that stuff together and then share it out across campus. And of course, that audience was much larger than just our main user base also. So everything, the structure was really there. Our design team started uploading the assets, and on the day that we did it, we have portals as part of our DAM structure, which allows us to build micro websites that can stand alone. And within 3 hours of uploading the assets, the design team had designed a portal, put it out there, put it on the main page, and had these assets that anybody on campus could go on and download. And then as we went on, they began adding more, the videos, explainer videos, image assets that conform to COVID with people with masks and that type of thing. So it was really very easy. We had the structure there. We just weren't, you know, we were ready to go. And it actually finally sold everyone on the use of portals that I had been screaming about for 2-3 years.
It is interesting how exigent circumstances sometimes, and COVID has shined a spotlight on a lot of things. including for many institutions, the
Yeah,
formality of DAM.
Why
Yeah,
haven't we been doing this all along?
Yeah,
So-
I think it's really interesting how, DAM is now really starting to, at least I think, to focus on giving your assets added value. I mean, make use of what you've got rather than just putting it on a shelf.
So John M. and Rick, we had a question come in for both of you. And John M., I'll start with you. And it's a question about onboarding and training. And then John B., I'm going to come over to you about this. So how do people hear about you is basically the question. And then how do you get the new staff at WGU to continue to know this is the digital version of how they get their paychecks and their accounts payable or their expense checks is what you do with everything else.
I go first. At
Yeah,
WGU onboarding. So as far as onboarding new individuals into the DAM, I'm very fortunate, and I hope I'm going along the right line of questioning. I have a DAM coordinator and a DAM administrator that handles most of that on the business side. So we're extremely fortunate. They have developed wiki sites, FAQs. They've actually developed courses on how to use the DAM. And when we onboard, they assign permissions to users. So we take a very hands-on approach, and then we work with them directly. We use overseas contractors to ingest content into our DAM. So that in and of itself is a unique challenge. And so having online resources available to them to answer questions, and then also having the resources, having a coordinator, a day-to-day coordinator, and someone to administer the DAM overall from a business perspective has been invaluable. So
nice, thank you for that. And Rick, onboarding, making sure that we can maintain state currency with people knowing about this thing.
Yes, and ours is a little bit easier, I think, because our user community is a bit smaller and tighter with primarily campus communicators in the different schools and colleges. So once we implemented and added on users, the growth is much more controlled, and it's mainly turnover or additions of new people within those units. Every time we have a new user, we have a package of startup documentation. They get an email with how to log on and a cheat sheet on, here's how you do it, and then some quick and dirty cheat sheets on just the basics. And onboarding video, they kind of gives them the quick walk around of how to do a search and get assets. And then we offer like live webinar basic user training. We do that quarterly, and that seems to work very well.
Lee, and onboarding for the kind of the big part of the quadrant that you've got at Yale.
The DAM that I'm currently in charge of is mainly used by communicators across the university. So onboarding is the usual thing, really. It's a cheat sheet via email. You sort of follow up with communication via the phone or problems. At one point, I had a series of videos that was actually in the DAM that people could, look at and sort of see how it works. But to be honest with you, I don't think they really look at those. I mean, I got to be honest and say, the DAMs these days, the interfaces, they're mainly self-explanatory. They work the way the web works. And it's only when you get into that kind of nitty-gritty of, maybe how to do Boolean advanced searches in that particular platform can get a little tricky sometimes. But by and large, I think people find what they want pretty quickly, or they email me and ask me if I can find it. That's a tried and tested way.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good observation at the end about that what we need for onboarding in most circumstances. I think for WGU, it's likely to be a little different because the workflow is so interesting to be hearing about DAM being used in this way. Now, John B., let's look at both sides of the coin. You've had a lot of years of observing client action. What are we've heard some approaches, 3 different approaches that have some overlays of similarity for onboarding.
Yeah.
observations about when it goes right and when it goes wrong.
Sure. I think it's funny, the range of guys on the panel. You know, we have one university founded 30 years after Samuel Johnson published the first English dictionary, and then another, you know, when I got my first cell phone. So it's incredible. And it's kind of representative of our clients as well, where you have, you know, born digital assets and now all these new types of assets, and you know, some of these yet to be digitized artifacts as well. But what we find, I suppose, through dealing with all these different types of institutions, you know, at different stages in their DAM journey, or, you know, some are first generation DAM users who are new to the whole process. Others maybe have already had 2 or 3 systems in place. So our approach is fairly similar regardless of their experience, in that what we find is, you know, if they understand what they're trying to do with their assets, it's much easier to then teach them how to use the systems. And our platform is very intuitive. So like Lee was saying, you know, a lot of the interfaces now are similar to websites or even stock licensing web portals and things like that. So typically, you know, the general users take to the DAM like a duck to water, because the search and you know, finding things is very easy. Like John, I think, or Rick was saying, you know, the more deeper you go into it, then you do require some training, and we do offer formal training at the start throughout our implementation process. So typically, you know, you might have a number of people really heavily involved in the implementation process from the client side, and they're going to learn as they go through that process. And then as new teams are introduced, we'll have formal training. It's documented. We do have video tutorials as well, which we actually find that they're quite useful. And we're constantly improving the educational side of our business, you know, and have specific teams been built now to help with that, because I think the onboarding is incredibly important if you want widespread adoption after this DAM launches, you know.
You bet. It's kind of onboarding and reboarding and more boarding and and many boardings.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a process with the users. It's something I always like to say to, you know, there are people when you look at maybe implementing a DAM who want a result in 3 months. They kind of want everything to be different from the way it is now
Right.
in 3 months. And it just doesn't work like that. It's a long process. I like to say that the return on the investment, you measure in 30 seconds here and 30 seconds there, and then one day nobody can remember the way we did it before. It's just there, and you can't live without it.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to capture some of that. I know, Rick, you and I were talking during one of our kind of getting ready sessions about that concept of, I used the phrase, and you kind of looked at me slightly askance, of post-implementation audit. But as DAM does roll out, when it was undergoing its growth that you depicted in your slides when we talked about that there's that sense of what Lee just said of like, okay, then you turn the switch and it's okay. And that measuring success and adoption can take a while, and it will go in successive curves. And John B., I think you're probably I'm John M., and having a very interesting experience in the measurement tools that you're using. And I'll use that to segue to the next question from kind of onboarding and everyday use. We had a question come in about, well, what about reporting when you're doing something like what you're doing? And they were talking about WGU in that question. So how do you report? What does management see about the mark and measure of your project and this arc of capability that you're introducing?
For us, the content that we've initially started using is fairly simple, but there's potentially hundreds of pieces of content in each course. Really, as we're building out the DAM, this is our first DAM. So as we're building it out, there's not a lot of impressive numbers as far as how much content is in our dam. I think what really what we're reporting on is whether our content works in an online capacity within the course, and making sure all the permissions are in place, making sure we're giving attribution to the correct images and everything, and legally making sure all that's in place and working within a course. So when they flip the switch, turn the course on, everything works the way it should. So there's not a lot of detail in that. It's a lot of more non-granular. Does it work or doesn't it work? So as long as we're not a blocker right now, that is pretty much our measurement. As we get into it and start to acquire more assets, then we'll start to get into reuse and how effective we are at that, and how effective instructional designers are in building courses. Are we reducing the time it takes to build a course, and are we saving money on content for that course? So
it'll be so interesting to see how this unfolds and what those units of measurement, if you'll forgive the phrase, do become. Because let's ask that same question to Rick. Rick, if you're making a board presentation or something to some of the operating management in the system, what marks and measures of success would you want to be reflecting on?
Well, everybody, in leadership loves those numbers, those infographics with how many downloads and uploads and users we have. And that's great. But what I think the better measurement is how many people don't complain anymore. There's so low feedback now from those unit communicators on, I can't get this, I can't find this, you won't let me have this, and to me that's the biggest measurement is everybody seems happy, which is unusual on a college campus. But so that those are my main things. And the things we've learned as we've gone through is looking at our analytics, especially like search terms and what people are looking for, is the more that we have been able to focus and give them categories of things, because a lot of people come into a dam and they really don't know what they're looking for. They got some strange idea, and we found that being able to categorize and lump things into kind of big picture items and then allow them to go into that and then drill down is very effective, and definitely our highest search terms are all within the category searches that we've set up.
Yeah, good. And Lee, just in the last couple of minutes we have, if you could comment on the same question about how is success measured? What storytelling do you like to do with an infographic or narratively about success?
Well, I'll be honest with you. In the 5 years I've been doing this, the PowerPoint with the graphs and the things hasn't really cropped up. I'm kind of with Rick on that. Most of the measurement, I think, comes with a general vibe from the communicators who are using it, that it's easier to have it than the way it was before, which meant that they had to ask somebody to find a photo. It would take 2 days or 3 days, whereas now they can get it instantly themselves, or if I have to look it up, it's probably 10 minutes. So yeah, it's that's not to say I haven't prepared those slides, because I have. And yeah, as I said before, there's a clear picture that you can see all searches increasing, downloads increasing, and certainly I think one of the biggest ones that we've done, Rick mentioned portals. We instituted a public portal that just so the public can download pretty pictures of Yale. I suspect it's mainly alumni who look at these nostalgic things, but the number of downloads that come from that are way above anything I imagined it would be. And it's so easy now just to get new content out there. I mean, it's as soon as it comes into the dam, if I like it, it's one click, bam, and the alumni can see it.
Nice, very nice. Yeah, the role of DAM in alumni, both in the private sector as well as, of course, in educational and membership institutions, is quite remarkable. General Motors, one of the earliest creators of this field in the mid to late 1990s, had this accidental tourist. They didn't buy DAM to do that, but found that former employees loved to go and see what was in the DAM that they had worked on, or even contribute to metadata, which is so. And like so many things, and as each of the four of you exemplify, there are so many unfolding opportunities with this technology. It brings richness, and hopefully, as it has to each of your careers, to contribute in ways where there's a chance to do something completely different, and then make what is completely kind of the same from that card catalog, Rick, to be completely different today. And I'd like to thank, on behalf of Henry Stewart and the many people who've gathered today, the time that each of you put in to gather your thoughts, think about these reflections, and spend a few minutes answering questions. And on that note, we'll bring this session to a close. In about 5 minutes, we'll start inclusivity and tagging and design. Thank each of you for your time. I hope to see you again really soon. Take good care.
I hope so too.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, David.